Welcome to CanAge Conversations, Champions for Change. My name is Laura Tamblyn Watts. I'm the CEO of CanAge, Canada's National Seniors Advocacy Organization. Today, I'm so delighted that we are going to be spending some time with Vickery Bowles, the Chief Librarian of the City of Toronto. Vickery, thank you so much for joining us today.
Oh, I'm thrilled to be here. So nice to see you, Laura.
So let's start at the beginning. Where were you born? Tell me a little bit about your early years.
Well, I was born and raised in Richmond Hill, Ontario, which is just north of Toronto, part of the GTA. And I have deep roots. My family has deep roots in Richmond Hill. My grandfather and father are both publishers and editors of the local newspaper, and it was a weekly newspaper. And my mother grew up and was raised in Richmond Hill as well. So we really have deep roots there. And it's a wonderful place to grow up with as a child and into my teens. And then I went away to university, not very far. I went to the University of Toronto, but that was really a great foundation for growing up and developing, because it was such a wonderful community to grow up in. The local library was nearby, and not surprisingly, I spent a lot of time there as a child, and then going off to university, that continued to be an important element of my life, because I was studying, majoring in history. So history majors always spend a lot of time in the library.
You do. Did you have a particular interest in aspects of history that drew you?
Well, I was always interested in Canadian and American history, but I became very interested in European history and British history as well as I went off in my career. So that was a really, it was 4 years of bliss for me, because I loved studying history so much and doing the research. And I was at university at a time when there wasn't any kind of computers. I mean, I had an electric typewriter. That's the era I was doing my research and using little card catalog cards to write my notes. So that was my foray into the use of libraries and my development of a love of libraries as well.
I remember we got our first electric typewriter. That was a Selectrix, and you had
IBM Selectric, yes.
Because you could actually hit a button, and there was sort of a kind of quasi whiteout in type of thing, and that was innovation.
Yes.
So you're spending time in libraries, but you're a history major. So tell me a little bit about how you pivoted into your profession.
Well, it was really, it really was at U of T when I was spending a lot of time in libraries. The Robarts Library, the Sigmund Samuel Library was my favorite, the Pratt Library at Victoria. And I came to understand, I have a much greater appreciation for what the library did. It wasn't just about accessing content, of course, that was a big part of it, but it was the quiet study space. There was the curation of content, the way it was organized so that it could be found and accessible. And then the importance of the library in developing not only your research understandings and how to use resources and verify your sources and all that kind of thing, but also the development of a love of reading, which is so important at any age.
Was there a pivot point in your career? You could have done a lot of things. You've got, passion in this area. You probably could have taught. You could have interest in European issues. Was there a pivot point that took you into your career path in urban libraries?
It was at library school. I was doing my master's in library science, and there were a number of different areas I could have gone into in terms of libraries. Special libraries at the time was an area where there was a lot of hiring activity, and public libraries weren't actually doing a lot of hiring at the time. So I did look at special libraries just as a career option, but it didn't appeal to me nearly the way, it didn't draw me the way public libraries did. And I think that the core values and principles of public library service have been what that's what drove me to choose that as my career path. And it's been the source of my passion for public library services, the core values of free and equitable access to a diversity of information and ideas, supporting intellectual freedom, lifelong learning, preserving the past. All of those core values of public library service have really been the source of my passion throughout my career.
That passion. I want to talk a little bit about the lifelong reading piece in particular. You and I met originally some years back at the Seniors Accountability Roundtable, creating a seniors
That's
library
correct.
in the city of Toronto. And
Yes.
we were sitting next to each other. I don't know if you remember. And we were talking about kind of areas of core passion for you. And you spoke to me, of course, we were talking about seniors at that event, but you spoke about lifelong reading and how, some of the concerns you had was because of some challenges with accessibility or, lack of inclusivity, many older people were not able to access their love of reading and the many, many resources that the library offers. Tell me a little bit about your thoughts on lifelong reading and tell me a little bit about what your vision is for an age inclusive library system.
Well, lifelong reading, it's really important, and we talk about this all the time with young children. It's really important for parents to spend time reading to their children, hopefully every day, because it's with that activity that a development of lifelong reading and a love of reading really develops. And we know from all sorts of studies the importance of lifelong reading and the way in which if you want to be successful in life, and studies have shown this, you really have to be a good reader. And so developing that passion, that love of reading is, first of all, it's so important for your future success, but also it's a wonderful, wonderful outlet and resource for people. And, through this pandemic, people have really turned to reading in so many different ways, finding new areas of reading that they're interested in. And it's been such a wonderful way in which for people to escape into somewhere else so it's terrific. And reading, what I think is so wonderful too is that reading is an activity from that you carry on throughout your life, and there's so many different ways in which you can read. Audiobooks, of course, are hugely popular, and they're particularly popular often with seniors, but that's reading too. And it's just a wonderful that people have so many different options to experience their love of reading and read throughout their life.
We're coming from a passionate reading family too, so I'm smiling because I'm surrounded by books in every format, including audiobooks on my phone. One of the other pieces that you've been really committed to, kind of a passion project for you, is making libraries into dynamic spaces. Maybe you could tell me a little bit about, your thoughts about the role of the library right now. We're in a time of pandemic and people aren't able to come into that communal space quite the same way, although it's a really important gathering social space. So really curious to hear kind of what are the areas that you're thinking about beyond reading that a library serves?
Well, there are very few places in the world today where public space is available in the way that libraries provide that public space. And people come to the library for so many different reasons. And sometimes it's just to be alone together. It's a public space where people can come to. One of the wonderful features and one of the things I love about libraries is that we welcome everyone into the library without judgment. We serve people from cradle to grave, and we have professional staff there to help people pursue whatever their interests may be and to support them in pursuing those interests. And we do that in the library. And now, of course, more and more, we're doing that online as well. But the physical space, the public space, the library is a civic commons. That is a really important role of public libraries. And I know even with the restrictions we're undergoing right now, we've heard from so many people about how they miss the fact they don't have access to this public space in the same way as they've had in the past. And, once we get through the pandemic, I believe that the access to that public space is going to continue to be just as important as it did in the pre-pandemic period of time.
Maybe even more important, because we have sort of holed up in our spaces. This is particularly true of older people, where we've been told overwhelmingly to stay home. So even some of the activities that some of the younger populations have been engaged in have been restricted for older people during the pandemic. And I think there's going to be a huge need for that connection and community yet again.
Yes.
Your leadership has also been a lot in aging and digital innovation and inclusion. And I'm excited to hear and learn a little bit more around some of the pillars that the Toronto Public Library is focusing around, particularly around things like digital literacy.
Well, digital literacy and inclusion is one of the pillars of our current strategic plan, which is from 2020 to 2024. And during that period of time, we're committed to addressing and to bridging the digital divide and teaching people more with digital literacy skills. And you know, what's interesting about the pandemic is it's really amplified inequities and amplified issues that already existed in society. And that's certainly true of digital literacy and digital inclusion. You know, I've always said that in the 20th century, access to education and information were the great equalizers, but in the 21st century, access to technology is just as important. And so we're really committed to making sure that people have access to the technology, as well as access to the skills they need in order to use that technology. And so we have a number of different initiatives underway. And through the pandemic, we've had to adjust, of course, because there was a period of time people didn't have access to our computers. So we developed internet connectivity kits. So for people in the greatest need, people who don't have access not only to internet, but they actually don't have a device even, we have worked with our City of Toronto and our foundation to put together these kits of a laptop Wi-Fi hotspot with 2 years of unlimited data. And we get those, we give them away to people who don't have access to the internet or a device. And these are people in the greatest need. And then our staff are accessible to these people and teach them how to use the resources that they've just been able to get. For a while now, we've had Wi-Fi hotspots, which we loan to people for 6 months at a time, again, with 2 years of unlimited data. And those are people who can't afford internet at home. We have Wi-Fi in all of our branches, and we often see people, and we've seen this through the pandemic when we've been closed, people sitting outside of our branches just to be able to use the Wi-Fi because they don't have access to the internet at home. So these are serious social issues that we are trying to address. And I think it's completely appropriate for public libraries to be doing this because we've always provided access to information and resources to support people in living their lives successfully.
Yeah, building on that, and that's such a great thing to think about. I mean, how critically important it is for the library to be an innovator, a lifter, a supporter of positive change, and really a reducer of social inequity. So many people just think, oh, libraries are about books, but really it's about not just lifelong learning, but it's about different kinds of wellness and advancement. One of the things people may not be as aware of is that you have a whole set of supports around workforce development and innovation, employment and job seeking. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, yes, workforce development has always actually been something public libraries have done from our early days when we were first started in the 1880s. It was, we were always supporting skills development for workers, and that has grown and developed over the years and evolved to become an increasingly important component of what public libraries provide as people change careers, or they need to develop new skills, or change the skills that or adjust them in some sort of way to reflect the needs of 21st century technology. So we do that we have workshops that we provide, we bring speakers in, we have we partner, we have a lot of partnerships, and we partner with technology firms like Google and Cisco to so people can get certification certificates in different IT skills that they can learn about online. And we facilitate that in groups, online settings. And pre-pandemic, we also did it in the branches as well, where people would get together and learn online together to get their certificates in whatever technology they're trying to address. And so we have a lot of workforce development opportunities. We have lots of electronic resources that people use all the time too. Safari, lynda.com. There's a whole Gale learning series online and so that can all be done online, and all you have to have is your public library card, and you can sign in, and you're away to the races in terms of being able to search whatever information you need on whatever skill you want to develop.
That Toronto Public Library card, like library cards around Canada and around the world, really is like having a superhero in your pocket. I mean, it's a gateway and an elevator and a generator of change and knowledge and community. It is the most extraordinary thing that I think you can have.
Yes, absolutely.
You're really involved as well beyond, the city. And I think people might be surprised to know how big the Toronto Public Library is in comparison to other library systems. I may get you to talk a little bit about that, but you're very involved with urban libraries, across this country. And, there's urban libraries councils more globally. Tell me a little bit about how Toronto Public Library fits into those other urban libraries, and a little bit about the organizations that are connecting to each other.
Well, certainly, I'd be glad to. Well, first of all, Toronto Public Library is the largest and busiest public library system in the world, both in terms of the number of locations and our visits on a per capita basis, and also the use of our collections on a per capita basis. So we're very proud of that. I'm a member of the Canadian Urban Libraries Council, and this is a group of CEOs from across Canada who are part of and comprise the Canadian Urban Libraries Council. And we meet regularly. We have different task groups that we establish to address particular issues, because fundamentally, while we are all serving our communities in the ways that our communities need us to, there are great similarities in terms of the issues we're wanting to address especially in urban environments. And so that is a really important, wonderful organization that Mary Chevreau, from the CEO of Kitchener Public Library, is the current chair of the Canadian Urban Libraries Council. And it's a wonderful collaborative organization that just makes us all stronger. In the United States, there's a very similar organization called the Urban Libraries Council, and Canadian urban libraries can also be a member of the Urban Libraries Council. It, of course, being in the United States, is much larger. It's a larger organization with greater infrastructure, but it's essentially has the same purpose, which is a collaboration of large urban libraries from across North America to work on issues and address issues and advocate on issues that are critical for the advancement of library service and serving our urban communities. So these are great organizations that we rely on tremendously. And through this pandemic, as chief librarians, we have all relied on these organizations even more than we would normally, because of the rapid pace and the unpredictability of the changes and the issues that we've been having to address. So they're great resources for libraries across North America.
One of the things we try is also highlight the Leadership for Change. I think it's important to note that you're not just a member of those, but you've actually chaired those organizations.
Well, the Urban Libraries Council, I'm the immediate past chair. That's correct.
Exactly. And so when you've been thinking about conversations with your own colleagues in Toronto, or perhaps through your network colleague organizations, What have you been thinking about with regards to aging and our aging populations? What are the issues that are coming up for you as librarians?
Well, a huge one, which has always been the case, but again, it's another issue that's been amplified with the pandemic, is social isolation. And that has been really top of mind and a big part of the work that we've been involved in during this pandemic. So, and we've been trying to address it as much as we can in different ways. One is we do seniors wellness checks. So we use phone calls because that's accessible technology for most people. And so we've phoned over 9,000 seniors between over the ages of 80 and more older to say hello. And, we do have to be careful because we all know that seniors get calls that they shouldn't be getting with, people trying to scam them. And but so we're very clearly, we say right up front, hello, I'm so-and-so from Toronto Public Library, and I'm here just to say hello and to see how you're doing and to see if there's any thing we can do to support you. And often it gets into a technology discussion with some of our customers. And they say, I've been trying to use this resource and I don't know how to, do a search on here. And so, this whole technology, or I want to, read some ebooks and I don't know how to get started with it. And so staff can help with that. It can just be about the fact that, I haven't talked to someone in a few days and this is so lovely. And in fact, we had one lovely customer who said, oh, you've made my day. It's my 100th birthday today. And, so this is a lovely birthday present to get this call. So our staff have been, honestly, it's been so heartwarming for our staff to make these calls and to talk to people because they have been so appreciated. So as I said, we've made over 9,000 of these calls. And so that's just one initiative that we've really taken on. Another is focusing on digital literacy. For customers, seniors who and many don't have and this has become really apparent through the pandemic, don't have the digital literacy skills they need to be able to use technology well and properly and safely. And so we've actually hired, we've got a youth intern program we've just started. We've hired some youth who are members of the BIPOC community, and they're 8 of them, and 6 of them are focused on digital literacy for seniors. So they are going to be serving seniors who either over the telephone, if they don't have access to a computer, or online for those who have access to a computer. They will be teaching them how to use digital technology and going through processes and safety tips and search tips and whatever is needed to help them learn how to use them. And it goes from the real basics, like how to choose a browser to use, how to use a mouse, and on all that kind of basic technology skills, to much more advanced support as well. So it's really focused on, and that's about social inclusion as well, because and not being isolated. So that's been an important part, is trying to help seniors have the technology they need to be more connected. They can be more connected with family. If they can do Skype with a family member or Zoom or whatever, then that's a lovely way to be able to sit and talk just the way we are now. It can really make the day for someone who is alone at home with not many supports around them or people to interact with.
Those types of relationships, those intergenerational relationships, whether it be through that intern project or whether it be through of your staff community members, are enormously rewarding for everyone, aren't they? It sounds like your staff and your team are really learning a lot and also just feeling filled up.
Yes, absolutely. It's been wonderful. And, as I said, the staff were a little hesitant at first about just kind of, really cold calling people. But the reception has been just so wonderful that the staff who are doing just really enjoy it. But the other thing I have to say, I think they're doing a wonderful job too, because they have to respond. They don't know what the person is going to say, and what they're going to, how they, and they've been responding so well to whatever is presented to them in those phone calls.
Well, and part of that also builds, I think, on two pieces. One is the inherent trust that I think people have almost uniquely, perhaps, in their library and their library team that are
Yes.
there. There's something that cloaks you in confidence and trust when you say that you're calling from the library. And that, I mean, I think that that shouldn't be overlooked. It's speaking to all of the built-in learnings and ideas about library, because many people who get a cold call, particularly in the time of a pandemic, would be suspicious and concerned, but they are, by contrast, welcoming and feeling nurtured and connected. I think it just speaks to that wonderful reputation that libraries and librarians have.
Yes, no, I agree. And certainly libraries are a trusted institution. And there's actually been research, Pew Research in the United States has done studies on this where, the trust that people have for public libraries generally is always tremendously high, which is really gratifying when you work in public libraries to know that they're so well appreciated.
I know that in the end, while you're funded, by the city and so on, funding is always a question. And when you have those innovative projects, like some of the ones you're talking about, or, that has to come from somewhere. So you have a foundation as well. People may want to
We
know a little
do.
bit more about how they can get involved with supporting that foundation.
Well, that's wonderful. I'm so glad you asked about that. Yes, we have a wonderful Toronto Public Library Foundation. They have raised over $90 million over the years for the public library in Toronto. They have, there is a board of volunteers, people who are committed to public library service and to volunteer their time to fundraise for the Toronto Public Library. And then of course there are foundation staff who support all of that work and do such great things for us. I'll give you an example. Recently through this pandemic, when we closed in March, we and the city identified a need for food bank locations. We opened up 12 of our branches to distribute food hampers in the way that food banks do, with the support of the Daily Bread Food Bank and North Harvest Food Banks here in Toronto. and the foundation, within a very short time of hearing about this and in talking with library staff, raised money so that we could start distributing in the food hampers some children's books. So we were able to distribute over 4,000 children's books in those food hampers with the support of the foundation and the fundraising they were able to do. Internet connectivity kits is another example. Through this pandemic, the foundation has helped raise money so that we can distribute over 400 internet connectivity kits to people who are in the greatest need in terms of access to technology and the internet. And we couldn't have done that without our foundation. And they were able to do this really, really quickly. Another initiative they're supporting us on is in our budget for 2021 to the city, we are recommending that we eliminate children's fines. And the foundation is helping to mitigate the first year impact of the elimination of those fines by donating $300,000 to the elimination of children's fines in 2021, which is just tremendous. And what people don't understand is that fines have been a traditional way for libraries to get books returned to the libraries. But in fact, it's proven, and many libraries across Canada, over 200 have eliminated fines. What it's proven is that it doesn't actually work that way. And what it actually does is it creates a barrier for people who can't afford to pay fines. And so we found, even looking in Toronto, it was children in vulnerable neighborhoods, at-risk neighborhoods, the poorer neighborhoods, who were most blocked from having access to the public library because of overdue fines. And so what the elimination of fines does is it gets books into the hands of vulnerable children. And I just can't think of a better initiative. And with the support of the foundation, I'm really hopeful we're going to get support from the city to eliminate fines for children in 2021.
I think that's a wonderful, wonderful way of managing a circumstance of different kinds of intersectional vulnerabilities. You want them more than ever before to have the resources at their fingertips. We'll make sure that we have all of the information for how to donate to the Toronto Public Library Foundation.
Yes, yes, you just have to Google Toronto Public Library Foundation and you'll get the link. And you can also go to Toronto Public Library, to our homepage, and there's a link right on the homepage that says support your library, and you can you just have to click on that link. So www.tpl.ca, click on the link for support your library, and it'll take you right to the foundation.
For those people who are thinking about holiday gifting, or perhaps other types of celebrations, what a wonderful way to give the gift, not beyond yourself, but really to an entire community as well. So it's a great opportunity for people to give back to their communities and see real change in their.
Absolutely. Yes. No, absolutely. The foundation has been, I mean, we get wonderful funding from the City of Toronto, but we are able to do so much more with the support of the Toronto Public Library Foundation. They are a godsend to us, and we really appreciate all the support from the volunteer board, the other volunteers who are involved, and from the staff at the foundation.
Well, you're a godsend to us. Tell me, just before we have a chance to wrap up today, people come to you as a change maker and as a leader, and often are trying to, figure out, tell me, how did you get here? What is your direction? What advice might you have? Maybe give us a little bit of an insight into how you became the chief librarian of the busiest library system in the world. And any advice that you would have for people who are interested in following their dreams into that type of a leadership role?
Well, I've been working in libraries for over 30 years, and I was previously on the senior team, executive team for I had roles having to do with responsibility for our branches, public service. More recently, I was a director for collections. So I was responsible for all the library's book and electronic collections, and AV collections, other language collections. And it was wonderful. And when the opportunity when the city librarian position was vacant, I knew that this was the job I wanted to apply for, and I feel like I've got the best job in the whole world. Absolutely. Because, there is so much opportunity to make a difference. And that's what the public library does, is we make a difference. We find ways to respond to needs in our communities. And then we look at different ways of addressing those needs. And our current strategic plan provides us with a tremendous roadmap for getting to where we need to be in terms of serving our community. So it's just wonderfully gratifying. And I guess my advice to anyone starting out in or choosing a career is to follow your passion. And I know it sounds a bit like a cliche, but it's so true. I mean, honestly, you have to love what you do. Work, it takes up so much of your time. You have to be doing something that you love doing. And I've been really fortunate in the people I work with too, with various library board members that I work with, the people, my colleagues at work. I refer to my colleagues at work as my work family. Everyone really cares for each other. We don't know a lot about each other's personal lives or share a lot of personal things. What we do is we just are considerate and kind, and we care about each other. And that is an important part of your career too, is being in a workplace and a work environment where people care about each other and the work that you do. And so I think that is my advice, is that, follow your passion. And then when you get to a work environment, is just to, foster an environment where people are connected and care about each other, because that just makes everything so wonderfully worthwhile and inspiring.
But organizations are shaped by the people who lead them. And so your values around kindness and caring and change making and inclusion are not surprisingly also reflected in your strategic plan, and your passion for helping communities and meeting needs are inspiring to so many of us. Thank you so much, Vickery, for taking the time to talk through some of your experiences, the role of libraries in general, the role of your library in particular, and helping map out some optimistic pathways for change for those who might be thinking about how to spend some years of their life. Thank you so much for joining us in CanAge Conversations, Champions for Change.
Thank you so much, Laura.